And he said, listen, he said, we go into companies that are doing hundreds of millions. If they are not on board with tithing off their gross, okay? Mm-hmm. So if they do $2 million a year, they tithe $200,000.
Yeah.
Okay? He said they can be floundering and they still have to commit to it, or they won't even consult them, which I thought was crazy.
Yeah.
But he said he's never been a part of any consulting that he's done. He's never been a part of a business where he went in and they agreed to everything, where the company didn't grow in the next fiscal year, not once.
Hello and welcome to The Uncomfortable Truth. We are super glad to have you today. We're getting close to Christmas, rolling in on a season of giving and, unfortunately, giving and receiving, which is what it's kind of supposed to be about, but not, right? I mean, is that something?
Oh no.
What's going on with Christmas nowadays? That's what I want to know, and what are the pressures that people feel when Christmas starts rolling down the pike, and you start thinking about what am I buying? Most of the time, we're thinking about what are we buying for people, right?
My wife and I, we always joke, and I always tell my wife, I'm like, we just all need to all show up in the room. Everybody has a $100 bill, and then they all hand it to each other, and then you leave.
I'd love that. You just solved the quandary of Christmas.
Everybody just hands their $100 bill to each other, and you leave.
You want to up the ante? Just hand 1,000. Yeah. Just bring your $1,000 bills, and I'll give you my 10. You give me your 10.
There you go.
You know.
There you go.
And we'd rather, in a lot of cases, you'd rather have the money than what you got.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's at the end of the day, there's a reason that you walk into Sam's Club in July and there's already Christmas gifts and decorations and Christmas trees up on the shelf.
Mm-hmm. Why is that reason?
That reason is money. It's strictly a money, worldly marketing ploy for all of these big businesses to ultimately make more money. The sooner they get that out, it's the psychology behind it is that we need to start thinking about Christmas. We need to start thinking about what we're going to be buying.
That's
people start buying gifts. They see that stuff, they start buying gifts, and it's an addiction, and it's become
an expectation. Cool story I heard recently was Coca-Cola, the drink company, when they were like gearing up in their formative years, I guess you would say, Coke was considered a summer drink. So all of their marketing and everything was geared towards drinking Coke in the summer. But what they realized is that you got to have revenue in the winter too.
Right.
So they came up with this genius marketing plan. Essentially, they took the stories that had been told about Santa Claus and all the different names and combined it into one, calling him Santa Claus, created the fat, rosy-cheeked, white-bearded dude that you think of when you hear Santa Claus.
Saint Nick.
Yes. And built their campaign to drink Coca-Cola in the winter around Christmas and Santa Claus.
Yep.
And look how that went.
It's genius.
Yes. So the idea of Santa Claus that you have in your head when you think that was developed by Coke. For what reason that you just said?
Money.
Money. Old greenbacks.
It's so interesting, really, and going kind of off topic here because I really want to dig into what the Bible has to say about being generous and giving, and the real reason for this season, and that nobody talks about is this psychology, behind all of this, all of this money game.
Yes.
How they pull on your heartstrings, how they get you. They understand that if they can elicit a certain emotion and pull it out of you, that you're going to spend more money. They understand that that's the way it works.
Huge psychology.
Yeah. It's just interesting how psychoanalysis is used to just in at the top level of pretty much everything that we deal with on a day in and day out basis. That is taken into consideration whenever prior to them throwing out a particular campaign, starting a new trend, whatever.
Not only that, but they have your algorithm too. They know you possibly better than you know yourself on what your buying habits are.
Right.
And so they develop different campaigns are developed specific to your buying habits that pulled on your strings.
It's kind of like we're fighting an uphill battle, right?
It feels like it sometimes.
Yeah, it really does. The good news is that we have a truth.
Mm-hmm.
We have a truth that whenever we feel and recognize, we also have a truth that helps us feel and recognize in the Holy Spirit that this isn't right. Mm-hmm. Something's not right. This doesn't feel like it lines up with you, God. Like this doesn't feel like that it's coming from you. Mm-hmm. And that's.
Before we get into that, I want to ask you guys some questions about the hard parts of Christmas. And I think that it probably, for me, it hits my wife more than it hits me. It's the expectations of Christmas and the stress of Christmas. What does that look like in your family, Shawn, when you're, say, a month or 2 months out, when y'all start gearing up and buying things and all that? How does that make your family function? How does your wife operate during that time? And how does that make her feel as you get closer and closer, even on the day of Christmas?
Okay. That's an interesting question because right now it's a little bit different of a circumstance than what we normally deal with. And the reason why is because our two oldest daughters are getting married next year. So we're already putting deposits down on wedding venues, wedding dresses. There's a lot of things that extra expenses that we're also incurring at the moment. On top of, hey, we have the stress of, normally my wife doesn't ask me to go shopping with her, but this past Saturday she did. And I could tell 100% she was way more stressed than normal.
Already.
Mm-hmm.
As we're recording here, we're 3 weeks out from, or 3.5 weeks or so.
Roughly.
Mm-hmm. And there's no question. And we even stopped and spoke about this probably on 2 different occasions. I'm like, hey, this is supposed to be fun. Mm-hmm. We don't have to go out there and drop $1,000 on everybody. It's ridiculous, the amount of money that the expectations that our children have. And, for us, we put our children on a budget. We're like, hey, our 2 oldest kids were like, hey, look, we're not doing this anymore.
Right.
Y'all are about to have your own families. This is the way it's going to work as we move forward.
But you did. This is the first year you've done that?
First year we've done this in many, many years.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so I could tell that she's stressing out about it. She feels like,
she's concerned she's not going to meet the expectation that she's always been able to
there
meet.
Is 100%. That's a fact. And
that's
so
it's a real thing.
It is 100% a real thing. And it's not just because of the wedding. I think everybody as a whole, with inflation and, this last administration we just got done with, it's been a crazy 3.5, 4 years from inflation to the, cost of goods, cost of groceries have doubled. And all the way down to, as we're in the insurance business. Insurance premiums have jumped significantly. There's been a lot of craziness going on, and a lot of these are fixed costs that people can't control.
Right.
And I think it's got people more stressed out than normal. Mm-hmm.
What is Amy? How is her mindset and attitude and everything running up to, and then the actual?
It's fun. We have always been pretty disciplined in our budgeting, and
so you have a bucket set aside for Christmas.
The bucket's there.
Okay.
The bucket is there. So because we generally have a budget, whenever the time to roll out some Christmas decorations and start getting excited about just the joy that we feel whenever this season comes along. There's not generally a whole lot of stress there because we're not we're not trying to create something from nothing. It's been something that's been planned since last year at the same time. And so, there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of joy in the air, just the idea of blessing people and, just getting to spend time with family. I feel like that outside of work, there's not a whole lot of stress. I think that this time of year helps me to deal with the stress at work.
Okay.
Because
That's good.
I just think just the idea of getting to give, I mean, Jesus says in the Gospels that it's more blessed to give than to receive.
Right.
And there's truth in that. I mean, I love to see people's excitement when they get something that they were hoping to get, or to give to someone in need, that didn't think that they were going to be able to give their kids something this year, and so it can be stressful.
Sure.
But we try to eliminate a lot of that by having a little bit of a plan.
That's good. Jocko Willink says discipline creates freedom. He might have got that from somebody else, but what you've created there is the discipline to save for Christmas, so it doesn't, because money will stress you out if you don't have it.
For sure.
And if you don't have it allocated towards a certain thing, and then you're going and buying and either pulling from different pots or going into debt to buy Christmas gifts, that is stressful.
All that being said, we've still taken a step back, and we're in a season of life where heck, I'm gonna be 40 next in 6 weeks.
He's an old fart, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm younger than you two.
Yeah.
But
I can't believe it. It's just weird.
It's weird for me to think about, but season of life where you just I don't know, you recognize that time is fleeting.
Yeah.
You need to make better decisions financially in order to, hopefully put yourself in a situation, where you've got a little bit more freedom one day. But at the same time, we trust that God's going to provide for us.
That's right. Yeah.
Amen.
So,
Yeah.
that's kind of how we look at it.
Okay. Christmas is kind of tough. It's a season of joy. Honestly, like your family's Christmas spirit has rubbed off on us some, which it's good. It's a good feeling. And I mean, Christmas is still like in the forefront of my mind. It's like, be thankful, be grateful.
Right.
That's the overall theme of like what I try to keep forefront. But for my wife, it's been stressful for a while. Number one, rolling from Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was a time her dad died almost 17 years ago, and Thanksgiving was around his birthday. Every year we'd go up and see family to celebrate his birthday and Thanksgiving and a couple other birthdays in the family as well. So that is hard for her, remembering her dad. It's a good time to remember her dad. And it's also difficult because she remembers like how involved he was in all of those. And then rolling that into Christmas, she kind of explained it to me the other day, and I wish I was listening more and wrote it down. It kind of went like this. She said, everybody has an expectation of Christmas and what it should look like. And she said, I feel like I'm the holder of the expectations. Like your expectations and delivering on your expectations is up to me. And I cannot meet all of y'all's expectations.
I think our wives feel that way in a lot of areas of life.
So when we get closer and closer to Christmas, those expectations build up. And then the date, we always have, last 2 years have been better, but we've always kind of had this crash on Christmas Day where somebody didn't maybe get what they wanted, or some expectation wasn't met. And my wife feels this like across the board, not just for me and our kids, but my mom and her mom and her
all
brother.
The extended family.
Like she's kind of the keeper of the family, you would say.
Yeah.
She's kind of the glue that holds most of it together, I think.
That gift of discernment goes both ways. Like it's a gift, and sometimes it can be a curse.
So it's just always this crash, and it feels awful. And we've I've had 2-3 years ago, one of our kids had to spend 8 hours in his room on Christmas because he wasn't thankful for a gift that he got, and he made some dumb comment. We don't want it to be like that,
right?
We strive to not build it up so much that there is this crash on Christmas Day. I don't know if anybody else feels that way out there.
There's no. I was just thinking. I can think of when my kids were younger, them being highly disappointed with all these amazing gifts they got because they didn't get this one thing that they wanted that might have been $1,200, and we're
as
like,
a parent,
we're not buying it.
It makes you it makes me want to go off the rails.
Oh, there is no question.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I'm exactly the same way.
So,
Go ahead. I wanted to back up and just say something. Earlier, I was talking about my wife and being a little more stressed than what I feel like is the norm. But then every year she does get stressed about because she wants to make everybody happy.
Right.
And but on the flip side of that, she loves to decorate, and like her favorite thing to do is to decorate the house. And so there's absolutely some joy, and it's probably my favorite time of the year as well.
Yeah.
Although in the midst of it all, there's still a lot of stress, and I feel like the most stress falls back on mom and dad trying to make, just like you're talking about, Courtney trying to meet everybody's expectations, and you want them to be happy.
Yeah.
And do you think it's supposed to be that way or not?
I don't know why. I ask my wife all the time, why do you feel like you have to make everybody happy? I mean, that's a decision that they need to make. If our kids aren't happy, they can get over it.
Right.
Like if my mother-in-law's not happy, and I would tell her this, she can get over it. If my brother-in-law's not happy, if my mom's not happy, I'm like, hey, what's going on? That's in your head. Like, let's move forward. It's not my responsibility to make you happy. It's not your responsibility to make me happy. So, but I think our wives are just intrinsically wired to want to make their families happy. Mm-hmm. We talk about these things of Christmas and leading up and the joy that we have and why we feel that joy and the stresses we have and why we feel that stresses. Now let's jump into what does the Bible say? Because that is our guidebook.
Yeah, I mean, the Bible says, in 1 John 3:17, and so this one kind of hits you in the face. It says, if anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? How can the love of God be in someone who sees someone in need? That person has material possessions. They see someone in need, but they have no pity on them, and they're just more concerned with the things that they have, and so all these expectations that we're all talking about that our kids might have that we've created, we hold the key to that. They get upset. No,
we hold the key. We developed it. That's
right.
What you're saying, right?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, we developed it. We created it. Yes, everybody knows a 3-year-old kid that got mad at their birthday party because we come out of the womb selfish. I mean, that's just the way that it is. But I'm not talking about that. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the expectation of I'm talking about entitlement. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the things that we try to teach our kids that on Christmas they're looking at all their other friends that
you can find somebody that has what you don't.
That's right.
You can find anybody that has what you don't.
These kids are comparing themselves just like these 40-year-old dads and moms are doing the same thing on social media.
What's the first thing when your kid calls their cousins on Christmas?
What'd you get?
What'd you get?
What'd you get?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What? Well, I mean that's the first thing.
Yeah, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just But maybe there is. I don't know. That's what we did. It's exciting.
I don't think that there's anything wrong with it to a degree.
Yeah.
But it can get out of hand.
A general excitement for what'd you get that's exciting for you. Like that's how we want to teach our kids to view that. I'm super pumped that you're excited that you got what you're asking for.
Right. Well,
I'm jealous.
Well, you think, okay, don't go to school next Monday and start spouting off, the things that you got for Christmas, because there could be somebody sitting in your class that didn't get one single thing.
Right.
And so we know those things. And it's not that you just gave them some bombardment of gifts that is just crazy unusual. It could be that your one gift that you gave them is more than that person sitting next to them got, period.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I feel like that when I go back to the reason for the season, when I go back to like what I feel and why I feel joy when we coming into the Christmas season, like I think about what Christ has done for me. I think about the price that he paid, and I think about the gift that he gave me and how generous he is with me. And it makes me want to be generous.
Yes.
I want to go and love on people, and I want to use the things that he's given me to bless people that need it, that truly need it.
Right.
And that's what the Bible talks about. The Bible talks about just being generous. In Proverbs 11:25, it says, a generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. And in Acts 20:35, Paul's talking about, he says, in everything that I did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak, remembering the words the Lord Jesus himself says, it is more blessed to give than to receive. There's verse after verse after verse that talks about being a cheerful giver, that talks about they will know you by your fruit. They will know you by your fruit. In Matthew, it talks about that. What kind of fruit are you bearing? Are you bearing bad fruit? Are you bearing good fruit? And it talks about being a cheerful giver, and trusting that by looking for opportunities to spread the love of Jesus and to be a cheerful giver. Another thing that it says, which is something that a lot of people are not very keen on, is giving in secret. That speaks.
What's the verse? Don't let your left hand know what your right hand
That's
is
exactly
doing.
what it's talking about. It's in Matthew 6.
In the day of social media.
That was Jesus saying that, right?
Probably more difficult now than ever, because people, you think about like social media, and a lot of the stuff that goes the most viral is people giving stuff away and doing kind, generous things. And
I've had just a battle in my head about like making videos like that.
Yeah.
Just because of that.
Yeah.
Because it's not about the accolades that you can get from giving something.
You see those people, and they're fun. It's fun to watch those videos.
Absolutely. It's fun. It makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it does.
The guy that's got $1,000 and he throws it up in the air and he's like, if you catch it, it's yours.
Like,
and
right.
Like how cool would it be to walk around Walmart with $10,000 and just stand there to check out and pay for people's groceries?
Right. It would be wonderful.
Coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
It'd be neat.
I think at the end of the day, if you're doing it for personal gain and for views only, like to go viral or whatever, I think that's absolutely blasphemy. I think that's a slap in God's face, right?
But what if you use them dollars to give more?
If your heart is genuinely, hey, look, I want to do this to grow this following for nothing but kingdom work. Okay, so we're not. I think everybody knows that we're not for profit, right?
Yeah.
So if
I don't know, we are a nonprofit, by the way.
That's right. And so if we get millions of views and we start getting monetized off of that, we are going to take that money and turn around and put it back into the ministry.
Yeah.
100%.
That's absolutely right.
And I believe when God knows that, He knows your heart, right? I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with it.
I think that there's a reason that verse exists. Okay, so like there's a reason that Jesus felt led to speak that, and you talked about the left hand not knowing what the right hand, and it's in Matthew 6, and it talks something along the lines of giving in secret because your Father in heaven who sees in secret will reward you. Okay, so like you don't need to be rewarded by the masses. You don't need to be recognized by them. And who cares if you are? All that matters is that God recognizes what you're doing. He understands that you're fulfilling his purpose in your life by being generous and being a cheerful giver. And you don't have to do that. You can be in the Walmart line doing the exact same thing, pay for their groceries without them knowing, and walk away.
Yeah.
And nobody ever knows except for you and God. Okay, so that's what I feel like. It's preaching to is, if what we're doing here is we're trying to plant seeds for Jesus, we're trying to reach someone for God's glory and tell them, maybe somebody that's never heard, maybe somebody that needs some encouragement. I mean, our goal is to be able to bless people through this in every way that you can bless someone. You don't just bless people by, filling a monetary need. You bless people with encouragement, and you give emotionally, you give your time, there's so many ways to give, right?
Absolutely.
And so again, Jesus says, don't make that, don't go public with I feel like that we know. I feel like that we know when it's.
Yeah.
Does that make
sense?
sense?
Yeah. So like if you have the little old lady down the street and she's a widow, or maybe there was a recent death in the family and this lady's spouse died and he didn't have any life insurance. So, and when I think about like situations like that, I think about, hey, if my wife and I wanted to privately help the cause, and go in there and give in that situation, you don't want to say, hey, well, look at what we did. Like we helped her, she was in a bind and we helped her.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of like a situation where you don't want to air that out. You don't want to talk about that might be offensive to her, the lady that you're giving the money. You don't want to create a situation where God gets no glory, and you're over here going, hey, look at me, look at what we did, to try to validate your own self. Yeah.
I mean, it feels good. That's part of it, is that it feels good when you do something good and somebody recognizes you for it.
That's sure.
We had a volleyball banquet the other day, and they gave out a bunch of awards for the volleyball team, and it's great to be recognized.
Oh yeah.
I think that's why. That's the feeling. It's what God designed, right? Is that you're supposed to feel good when you give, and especially when you give sacrificially, but not craving that feeling or the approval of others on this earth when you do something like that, as only for God's purpose.
That's right. At the end of the day, any recognition that we receive, we should use that opportunity to point people the recognition to where it's truly, because any gift you gave me, God, anything that I've ever done, any dollar that you ever put in my bank account, it's all yours.
It's yours anyway. That's right.
It's all yours.
And that's the intention for the person that is receiving as well, right? Want them to feel and think of that as the same way.
Yeah. So the other day I ran into this guy, and we were in Marshall eating at Robbie's restaurant, the High Horse restaurant in downtown Marshall.
If you're in Marshall, go check it out.
They got great food, and ran into this guy, and him and his wife moved here from, I believe, Wickenburg, Arizona. They moved. I don't know if y'all have ever been to Wickenburg, but
I can't say I have.
I went there about 15 years ago, and it was desolate. And he told me, he was like, man, in the last 15 years, that place is just blown up.
Okay.
And so him and his wife, they just moved here. I said, why did y'all move here, of all places? He was like, man, we prayed about it for a long time, and we felt like this is where God was telling us to come. And I was like, so what do you do? You work remotely? How can you just move from Wickenburg to Marshall, Texas? And he was like, man, I'm in business consulting. He was like, I'm on a plane every week. And I was like, tell me more about it. And he was like, well, tell me a little bit about you. And anyway, long story short, Christian-based business consulting. And he starts talking about Malachi 3:10, your tithe and this and that. And he said, listen, he said, we go into companies that are doing hundreds of millions a year. And he said, if they are not on board with grossing, with tithing off their gross, okay? Mm-hmm. So if they do $2 million a year, they tithe $200,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so start crunching those numbers if they're doing hundreds of millions. If they're not,
you better have a good net profit margin.
If they're
not
going
to do it,
if they're not, he said they can be floundering and they still have to commit to it, or they won't even consult them, which I thought was crazy.
Yeah.
But he said he's never been a part of any consulting that he's done. He's never been a part of a business where he went in and they agreed to everything, where the company didn't grow in the next fiscal year, not once. And they're grossing off and they're tithing off of the gross. And he said it takes a lot of boldness and discipline for any business owner to agree to
What's
that.
Malachi 3:10? Is that the challenge of like you can't outgive God?
It's the only time in the Bible.
It talks about 10%.
It's the only time in the Bible where God says to test me.
Okay.
And he's talking about your tithe.
I'll pull it up.
Malachi 3:10. Yeah,
Pretty interesting, though. I mean, he harped and talked about it for about an hour. And
bring the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you a blessing until there is no more need. R.G. Letourneau, local guy, built businesses, made millions and millions, maybe $1 billion. I don't know. The dude was super rich. His goal in life was to give away 90% of his income.
He did.
And he did. And he did.
Yeah, there's I know of other testimonies just like that. You know, I mean, if you think that God doesn't bless a cheerful giver, then you just don't know. Mm-hmm. You've never tested. You've never tried to live out Malachi 3:10 because he will bless you abundantly when you are being obedient and when you are a cheerful, generous giver. And that's what the holiday season's about. The holiday season is about spending time with family. Christmas is about celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ. We get excited, we get joyful about the glitz and the glory of it all. At the end of the day, giving your kids a gift on Christmas morning and seeing their excitement's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's so easy to lose sight of the real reason that you're doing what you're doing, and that's what we've got to do. We've got to keep that in the lens, in the focus lens. We got to keep it where it is, because God clearly states, I don't know this for sure, but I would think that there's hundreds of examples in the whole text of the Bible where God discusses generosity, giving, loving on people, helping your neighbor, helping people in need, whatever the case may be. I feel like that those are all throughout the Bible. It's a part of the Christian walk. And just like in 1 John here, anyone that has been given possessions, anyone that has anything, and they see a brother and sister in Christ in need, and they don't have pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Like, if you're not experiencing some pause when you see someone that has a need, you might want to check yourself. You know, you might want to check yourself and see, you know, if your heart posture is in the right place. So what are you smiling at?
It hit a chord, but I think we're going to end here, and then we'll jump back into maybe a story on the next episode here, continuing kind of with the Christmas thing. What do y'all think?
I like it.
All right, cool. Thanks for joining us. Hit those buttons at the bottom. Help us reach more people for Jesus. Go kick the day in the face. We'll catch you on the next one.